Great. Well, thank you, Rachel and Yvette, for being with us. And Sally, I think if you wanted to turn your video on too. Um, Last week in our main room, we were talking about, what can we talk about this week? And Yvette said, well, Art Week's coming up. And
Yeah.
I know I am excited about it. Bravo has really made every day, everywhere art kind of one of the cornerstones of our community. And I think this initiative really speaks to that. So Sally, do you just want to maybe share a little bit of thoughts about, how different nonprofit organizations can consider opportunities like this to integrate into their work?
Well, I think the word for me is intersectionality. And I think so often, and Rachel and Yvette can really speak to this more specifically, but so often the arts are treated as separate from everything else that we're trying to do. And they're sort of off to the side as a nice to have added amenity. And that's true, but there's so much amazing work happening in our community to really create those intersections and make sure that the arts are a part of everything that we're doing. And whether it's education or whether it's quality of life, whether it's water quality, whether it's workforce development, talent retention, whatever it is, all of the community priorities, art plays a role. And so I think some of the great things that Rachel and her collaborative team at Art Week, putting that together, and Yvette and her team and many others on this call are doing are really lifting that concept of art everywhere, all the time, creative collisions. It's just got to be an integral part of what we do and frankly, what we expect from our community. So bringing that to the forefront is essential, and it is not something that a single organization or entity can do. There is no way for us to say one group or one organization can meet all of this need. As we just heard, there are so many different populations and so many different people and so many different ways to express yourself culturally. We need to make sure that there's broad-based support and broad-based opportunity. And so I'm really excited about the way that Rachel and Art Week are bringing this concept to life with so many great collaborators and partners. So I'll probably just hand it over to you, Rachel, unless there's more framing that you want to do, Brianne.
No, I think just maybe start by telling us a little bit about what Art Week is and in some ways we can start to think about it.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me and giving me this opportunity to share about Art Week. Art Week is like an impossible, ridiculous concept where there is no entity. It's just whoever participates every year. So we've been doing it for 6 years. The first Art Week had 7 events. Last year we had 70 events. And the way that that grows exponentially is that anyone can participate, anybody can submit. There isn't a jury that says, yes, we're gonna approve this art or not. We just open it up. But the trick is, because we're sharing through our networks, it grows mouth to mouth. And so people who have experienced Art Week last year are maybe starting to tell people, oh, hey, what are you going to do for Art Week this year? When the pandemic hit, we had this discussion, do we cancel, do we reschedule? But we all saw a perfect opportunity to just go with using digital or safe social distancing ideas. And I think it's really turned Art Week on its head. And we've come up with some really fun ways to continue to connect, even though we can't do it traditionally in a gallery. So on the slide, one of the things that I'm personally pitching for Art Week is I want to see every single yard in Des Moines put some art out front. And then when we all drive around for Art Week, it is clear that we are in an art show. It is clear that something is different. It is clear that we're all united. Even if our yards are all saying a different thing, if each neighborhood is taking their own collaborative approach, coming up with their own theme. And there is no submission process. I'm just asking people to use the hashtag on social media. Everything is kind of being funneled on Instagram at DSM Emerald City. I'll post kind of the details for this. I'm pitching this a little bit more than, I'll say more about Art Week, but I'm pitching this first because artist, or if you consider yourself an artist or not, you can be a part of this and feel connected with everyone. The little drawing of the poster is a little fairy garden that I saw in my dog walk in my neighborhood, and it just like took my breath away. I was like, this concept that I'm like dreaming up, it's not even my concept. We're already all doing it. We're decorating our windows with rainbows. We're saying thank you to the postman. People are already wanting to express in their homes. And so why not do it together for Art Week? So I posted the link with more details about how you can share with your own communities if you think it's a good idea and you want to get your neighbors in the mood too. There's like a printable flyer that you can print off and pass around your neighborhood. I'm still having to do that. Domestica actually helped me print like,
Cool.
I don't know, 700 flyers. And so we're taking care of the North of Grand neighborhood. I know the Kiwanis Club in Ankeny and their Miracle Kids are planning to collaborate together. So I'm excited to see what comes out of that community.
Well, that's a really interesting idea, and I wanted to kind of tag on to that, Rachel. I mean, you envision this as a neighborhood or individual kind of family or household activity, but I think there's a lot of potential for our nonprofits that have a physical space that maybe they can't be in right now, or teams that can't come together to think about how are you doing team building, and do we need another Zoom happy hour, or is that going to make us like our brains melt out of our ears and not rejuvenate us? And so, maybe taking this opportunity to say, hey, everybody envision something for our site to go in the yard to cheer people up and inspire people as they pass, or a way to even maybe share what our mission is in a different and more creative way than we normally do, in front of our space. I think that there's a lot of potential there for the nonprofit sector to be engaged and to kind of be inspired by this artistic movement, to participate and really communicate their mission in a creative way. So
yeah, I like thinking about that too, because even though we're calling this the All Yards Art Show, the simple fact is not everybody has a grass yard. But my collaborator, Chris Chavetta, kind of started this conversation of what can be a yard. Can your common space in your office be a yard? Can your common space in your apartment be a yard? Can your front door be a yard? And we're open to people expanding on the concept of yard, this communal space that's like your facade, that kind of like reflects how you feel about your community, reflects about how you feel about your role in your community. So yeah,
good.
I like the idea of expanding into the nonprofit.
Yeah. Sally, I saw you turn your video on, so I'm going to take that as maybe you wanted to say something, and then I'll also I would like to invite Yvette to talk a little bit about Art Force and kind of how you guys have been integrating arts and mental health and some of the opportunities. So Sally, go ahead.
Nope, I was going to invite Yvette into the conversation as well, because I think this was such a good idea. Rachel, thanks so much for all you're doing. I know that it's hard to be a collaborative leader, and you're doing a really good job of bringing this together. And I'm so impressed by the numbers that you've gone from 17 to 70 events. That's outstanding, and clearly shows that there's traction here and that the work you're doing really matters. But I was also going to just reach out to Yvette and have her kind of share some of her thoughts, and then maybe we open it up, and if there are others in the group that have thoughts or comments, because I think this is so much bigger than a single entity or even maybe a single week.
I don't have much to add to the conversation. I'm so glad Rachel is here. Art Force Iowa was going to participate in Art Week with an open house, which is what we usually do. So we're trying to figure out what it is that we can do at our new space at the former social club, or if we're just going to figure out, which lawns, yards, and front doors we're going to focus on which week.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an interesting an idea to kind of mobilize your youth to do outreach and kind of empower them through this opportunity that's sort of decentralized. So maybe let's talk about that a little bit, Rachel. And Sally indicated how challenging it can be to lead a collaborative that doesn't necessarily have an official center or even, you know, a nonprofit entity, right? So I have a lot of conversations with folks in the community who want to start a nonprofit. And sometimes the conversation is, do you want to start an entity or do you want to start a movement?
Hmm.
And those are not necessarily the same things. And so, you know, in this time of COVID too, we've seen a lot of like mutual aid groups coming up and people who are doing things outside of having that C3 status. And so maybe could you just speak to like, what does it take to create a movement and to invite people along when you are just a person who has a platform, you have a newsletter and an Instagram following, but could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would love to. It's the most creative installation I've ever worked on. That's kind of how I look at it. When I make an installation, it's not just about like the concept I'm thinking about and the materials, but it's also the room, it's the space, it's how people move through it. So when I got the opportunity to collaborate with Art Week, it's kind of the same thing. And every year I just think I can see the landscape of brilliant people in Des Moines that I've met and worked with over the years. Are they talking to each other? Can I connect them? And it's a slow process to reach out to each person and say like, hey, have you thought about this idea with this person? And it's actually kind of easy when those people, because they're very capable, look to each other and start talking. All of a sudden, there's a drive-in at the Des Moines Art Center for this year's Art Week. We actually thought that that wouldn't be possible because of like all kinds of logistics, but we've all been in the same community and collaborating. Someone just needed to ask, and so voila, it's there. We all have like all these crazy ideas, and it's just about talking to each other. And
Yes.
every year I connect to more and more people, and I just it's harder to like walk away from that and be like, oh, this is too harder, because it's not too hard. It's just it's invigorating.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think that's one of the things I've always appreciated about you. And I think we've, been connected for at
A
least
long time.
a long time. And I was saying in the beginning, I rewatched your TEDx talk
I
about
know.
making and kind of the moment before making. And, there's so much crossover to what you're talking about artistically into how our nonprofit communities can view collaboration and kind of building on those relationships, letting go of the ego, saying what if, and how could we, instead of like maybe the first question being about I don't know, like who's gonna hold the money or something. I don't know. I don't know. It's really super inspiring. So does anybody in the group, and I should give it's space for anybody in the chat, you're welcome to send a question to our presenters. I'm also going to just real quick let the breakout rooms know we'll be 2 minute countdown. um, uh, and Rachel, you kind of spoke to that pollinator mentality that I know Angie and I in our community investment team of two, we like to have the bee is sort of our animal or insect
Mm.
to just really show, that's what we feel our role is in the nonprofit sector, is to listen to all of these ideas or needs and bring people together to fulfill them. So I love that you're a fellow pollinator and that there are different ways to think about that. Sally, I saw you were kind of just sharing in the chat. Anything else you wanted to draw into?
Yeah, I just was going to say, Rachel, we have a lot of great people representing some great organizations, some of them arts organizations, some of them not. Is there anything that you need? Is there any space that you're looking to fill? Are there any gaps right now that you're like, gosh, I wish we had someone who could do this?
We're open. We're going to try to understand what is going to be in Art Week by the end of next week. So if people have a concept or an idea that they're like, oh, I want to be a part of this, reach out right now. I posted in the chat a website that's Art Week Des Moines 2020.sched. The biggest thing that you can help is get on there and make your profile and participate in what Art Week presents this year. Be an active art viewer and art audience, and really look at the artists that are working and making work here in Des Moines and acknowledge that, because just that, hey, that painting is beautiful. Wow, that poem really moved me. An artist can live on that for like a year. I mean, they also love money, but nothing is worse than putting your art out there and being like, oh, I guess nobody cares. One of my year-long projects is something called Art Beacon. I'll put that in the chat too. That is something, that's a community arts calendar that I email out every week, just to give that opportunity for the community to be like, oh, these are the shows this weekend. Now, the community calendar has been a little bit emptier because we're all staying at home, which is fine. Artists are busy making their work, and I am very supportive of their ability to habitate, hermit right now and make work. But I'm sharing a lot of resources that are related to Art Week or funding for artists or exhibitions. So use that resource too. So just participate in Art Week, but if you also have some way that you want to host an artist on your social media, or if you just want to talk about collaboration, let's do that. And I'll post my personal email. That'll probably be the easiest way.
Thanks, Rachel. We've got everybody from the breakouts kind of zooming back to us, and so in about 30 seconds, it looks like most folks have come back. Maybe the third room is still busy chit-chatting. Angie's in that room, so that doesn't surprise me, I'm just gonna say. But Rachel, thank you so much for sharing about Art Week. Sally, and just as people are zooming back, do you want to maybe unmute and give like your highlights from this, and then we'll talk about next week real quick?
I just think the highlights are, if you want to participate, you can. And I love what Rachel said. We all have these crazy ideas. It's just about talking to each other. I think that's very simple and very elegant. And sometimes we can all feel overwhelmed. Can I make that call? Is that the right idea? Is that a good idea? And at the end of the day, you don't know until you pick up the phone and that you call. So I love that concept, and I love the proof that you've shown, Rachel, that those phone calls can turn a conceptual grassroots event, a few activities into an event that spans a week and 70 partners participating. And I'm just really impressed and really grateful. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
And thanks for your support, and thanks for letting me have this opportunity to talk with everyone today.
Sure. And I think there's so much crossover into what Rachel said and Sally summarized into our conversation about collaboration. And so my charge for you this week is to connect with an organization or an individual who you haven't had a one-on-one conversation with yet. We've been having these large group discussions and breakouts. Just connect with somebody in our nonprofit community or an artist whose work you've admired, and ask how you might work together or support each other in the weeks to come. So you'll be able to find our presentation recordings on our COVID-19 page on the Community Foundation's website. I'll be sending out the recap as we do each week. Next week, we will continue our conversation series for at least a few more weeks. We'll be focusing in next week on summer youth programming, and there will be a pre-convening that United Way is doing among some providers. And then we'll be bringing kind of the best of information to you next week. So again, even if you might not feel like that's your lane, I think there's a lot to learn from other organizations. And feel free to shoot me an email if you have, a topic that you'd want us to address in the main room or breakouts. We will be planning as a group here now for the coming weeks, and we'll be communicating that out to you as well. So thanks for joining us today, everybody. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.
Bye, everyone.